says investment pledges came from local, regional and international investors.
From South Africa, we have pledges amounting to 179 billion. From the United States of America, we have pledges, Minister. As you manage the other issues, we are doing business with the private sector. So, from the United States of America, we have pledges amounting to 51.4 billion. In the European Union, pledges have been received from France and Estonia, totaling just over 2.8 billion.
The caucus leader of Action SA, Athol Trollip, has emphasised that they are resolute in their resistance of a VAT increase or tax bracket creep in the 2025 budget that was adopted in the National Assembly yesterday. The budget fiscal framework was adopted with recommendations made by Action SA that Treasury must be given 30 days to come up with alternatives to tax hikes while scrapping the VAT hike and to adjust personal income tax brackets. In a media conference at Parliament, Trollip says they will not support the ANC if their input does not yield fruit.
I was talking to the Minister last night and the Chief Whip of the ANC and telling them, now we have to find a solution. We oppose any VAT increase, we oppose tax creep, and if we don't find a solution in 27 days' time, do not look to us to support you to pass the rest of this budget.
Trollip added that the party had consulted widely before coming up with recommendations it had made in the standing Committee on Finance. Consultations included parties like the EFF, DA and MK. Trollip says not all parties they had reached out to were open for engagement.
We have engaged with the ANC, they engaged us in fact. I have engaged with the EFF. I wrote to the MKP, they blue-ticked us. That's fine, no problem. But we did reach out. But what is ironic, the DA spoke to nobody other than the ANC, making their demands, their unreasonable demands. They overplayed their hand. They didn't engage us, fine. They didn't engage the IFP, GNU partner. They didn't engage RISE, GNU partner.
Workers at the waste management company Pick It Up have embarked on a go-slow. The company says the workers are on duty, but waste collection services have not yet started. It has assured residents that it is working on restoring the services. Several areas in Johannesburg have experienced delays in waste collection due to the go-slow. Oliswa Makiki reports.
Waste Management Pick It Up says the management is actively engaging with worker representatives to address the concerns and expedite a resolution. However, updates on the recovery plan will be shared as the situation progresses. For SABC News, I'm Oliswa Makiki.
NATO foreign ministers are due to gather in Brussels later today for the annual meeting as they seek reassurances from the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio about Washington's commitment to the alliance. According to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, NATO allies pledged more than 20 billion euros in military support for Ukraine in the first 3 months of the year. Discussions over further support for Ukraine will take place over 2 days, today and tomorrow. The BBC's Tom Bateman reports.
The primary focus of last year's NATO meetings was Russia, which the Allies described as the most significant and direct threat to Western security. But as the 32 foreign ministers gather in Brussels today, a mix of alarm and confusion is present as they grapple with a dramatic change in Washington's focus, as President Trump ends Russia's isolation and pressures Ukraine to do a deal, while insisting on an unprecedented increase in NATO allies' defence spending.
Recapping the top story this hour, the Gauteng provincial government has secured over 312 billion rand in investment pledges, exceeding its target by 12.5 billion rand. This according to the MEC for Finance and Economic Development, Lebogang Meile, while addressing delegates at the Gauteng Investment Conference in Johannesburg. For SAFM News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Specsavers cares about your vision. Up to 1 in 4 children suffer from short-sightedness and may not complain about their vision difficulty. Get tested today. Specsavers.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Time's what you make of it. Energy, spend it wise. Chasing and running, it's so consuming. Oh, won't you rain on me? Go, flow, give me energy, magic. 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 Magic, I've no fear for the rain no more. I welcome the purity, so let it pour. After the rain, I feel reborn. I dance in the space that's opened up once more. So I let it flow, let it go, flow. Give me energy, magic. 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 Magic. Shower me with your holy water. Cleanse away, wash away, burn disease. Show me the way, let me be like water. Flowing, going like the river. Go, flow, give me energy, magic. 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 Magic, magic,
Sabina coming through with a brand new one, Maji, translating to water in 3 years, in 3 languages. My technical operator looking at me like I done lied. It translates to water in 3 different languages. But yeah, beautiful song, and it speaks to exactly that, actually, just the flows and the birthing elements of water. She was in the studio a couple of months ago last year when the song came out, and we talked quite extensively about this particular song, some projects that she's involved with, and of course her international representation. Hey, how are you doing? It's changes a mile a minute living in South Africa. It's hard to keep up. You know, you go to sleep and the country's one way, you wake up and it's one way, and whilst you're dealing with the fact that your budget has been voted in, then you wake up to Donald Trump tariffs. I don't even know where we begin to make sense of everything at this point in time. But for the next 2 hours, we are hopefully going to take a little bit of a relief from all of that and focus on other issues. And we're going to be looking at looking beyond the statistics rather, with aware.org. And they held a round table with various stakeholders just to have a conversation around alcohol-related road deaths. So we're going to have that conversation with aware.org in the first portion of the show. Also giving you an opportunity to, especially if you are in the world of arts and culture. It is the annual Arts and Culture Trust Nyoluha Scholarship Program, and they've extended the deadline for this, so we'll get more information from them around that. We'll also be touching base with the visual artists today, and then on the other side of 2 o'clock, we are debunking and understanding laws around a shared life, cohabitation and separation. So we're going to be in conversation with a family lawyer today, Mary Jane. Mary Jane's been on the show before. If you want to weigh in on that conversation, perhaps you have some questions that you want to ask about your situation that you currently find yourself in, feel free to send us a voice note on 061-410-4107. That's our WhatsApp line, or you can give us a call on 086-000-2032. That is the number you can call us on. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll be right back.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Alrighty, so as we continue to grapple with high road fatality rates, aware.org brought together key industry leaders and policymakers as well as stakeholders for the Aware Road Safety Round Table. And joining us now in conversation is Mugebe Tulo, who is the CEO of aware.org. How are you doing this afternoon, Mugebe?
Good afternoon, Bridget. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for the platform. It's always a pleasure talking to you. We are well, thank you.
Thank you for the time. Much appreciated. So you held a roundtable on the 28th of March, and this was a platform really for thought leaders from various stakeholders. Talk to us about, I guess, firstly, let's try and understand the objective behind this gathering.
Okay, so Bridget, as you know, we are a country that's very good at talking. So talk shops is something that we excel in. So this time we decided to take a different direction, and we decided to put together in a room various stakeholders that looked at the same problem from very different lenses, which would allow us to get different views around the solution to this problem, or at least ideas and recommendations around the solution to the problem of the carnage on South African roads related to alcohol consumption. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what we did. We wanted to have a robust conversation with the right people and find solutions that we could actually execute realistically.
What were some of the key observations that came from the various stakeholders that speak perhaps to the crux of the issue?
I mean, some of the findings are anecdotal, and because we have so many subject matter experts in the room, I guess anecdotal actually can mean expertise. There's a lot of data that was used as well. So having, as I said, the right people in the room, so stakeholders from the RTMC, from the JMPD, from ARB, which is the Advertising Regulations Board, to the likes of VW, who are involved from a completely different point of view, to the likes of members of the industry themselves. So some of the solutions are ones that we know. We know that law enforcement is key when it comes to solving this. Law enforcement is key from the point of view of visibility, from the point of view of prosecution. We know that before law enforcement comes into play, that awareness and education is imperative. And this is not just about telling people that driving under the influence is not the correct thing to do, because I believe that most people are very well aware of this. The problem is that perhaps a lot of people don't know what the potential repercussions of this are. And the ones that maybe have considered what the repercussions are, do not think that these repercussions will happen to them. It's almost in some distant world out there. And then past the law enforcement, once the prosecution segment of this is taken care of, because that's important too. We need prosecutions in order to curb the behavior, because this is all about behavioral change, which means that you need a 360 approach. You need the rehabilitation leg as well. And that's where the likes of NICRO come in, to see how we can rehabilitate offenders that are, for example, first-time offenders. They're not a danger to society. And these are people that have proven that they qualify and can change from a behavioral point of view. So these are the things that stick out from an insights point of view. You need to, forgive the pun, but arrest this problem at every single point that you can possibly get to it, in order for us to potentially solve the scourge of driving under the influence.
I want us to just take a quick pause, Mugebe, and then we'll come back on the other side of this and explore one of the insights that you speak of, and that is repercussions, considering the fact that law enforcement was in the room. And perhaps some of my some of our listeners today might argue to say very law enforcement is part and parcel of the problem and is an enabler of the problem. It's just gone 20 past 1 o'clock as we have this conversation around perhaps, examining solutions and the challenges to curbing SA's alcohol-related road deaths. What are your thoughts out there? We'd love to hear from you. You can WhatsApp us on 06141044107 is our WhatsApp line. If you want to send through a WhatsApp voice note, you're more than welcome to do so. Or you can give us a call on 086 000 2032.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, we are in conversation with the CEO of Aware.org. Mugebe Tulo joins us on the line. And they convened a round table in Biza with various stakeholders that happened just a few days ago on the 28th of March. And they had thought leaders from the industry, from automotive sector, from road safety organizations, including safety and security officials, government agencies, just to reflect on the statistics and the existing programs and engage on sustainable solutions, perhaps to minimize the risks on the road and save lives. And when you're talking about, sort of the various findings and observations that came up from the conversations, issues around awareness and education, issues around law enforcement and repercussions, and that got me thinking, was there an honest conversation had amongst the stakeholders as well, in as far as the relationship that, drivers out there, as well as pedestrians, I guess, to some degree, have with safety and security officers in South Africa? Because there's very much this thing of, even if you get stopped at a roadblock, or you are anticipating some kind of disruption on your way from a night out, that for as long as you have a little bit of cash and a slick tongue, the likelihood is you will get away with whatever behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that question will always come up. And we had a very frank conversation about this. And I mean, there is a great trust deficit between the public and law enforcement at the moment, and they acknowledge that too. So it's not something that doesn't exist, and it's not an elephant in a room that we just look past and we don't discuss. The reality is that there are thousands upon thousands of honest men and women on the roads working hard and doing an honest day's work. I mean, I've just stepped out of a briefing from the Department of Roads and Transport, which had a room full of people that are absolutely dedicated to ensuring that this work happens and it happens correctly. We take an all-of-society approach to the problem of drinking and driving, and all of society includes you and me and the person with the slick tongue and the little bit of money in their pocket. The people that are, let's say, offering bribes are as complicit as the officers. Well, maybe not as, because they did not take an oath, but they are complicit too. In these crimes, and as long as you offer a bribe, the problem continues. We always blame the bad fruit or the bad seeds in the law enforcement, which do exist, but they certainly do not make up the majority. And yes, what we were told is that there is an absolute crackdown on these law enforcement officers that, for example, take bribes. And this came from the mouth of Mr. Mike Botolo himself, who leads that part of the work that Aware.org does, that there is a crackdown on people that take bribes. There was also the question of, for example, officers that come to work under the influence, and that is also something that they recognize. And it is something that is being taken care of, that both truths can exist at once. And it does not take away the responsibility of ordinary citizens like you and me to do the right thing. The first right thing is to not get behind the wheel knowing that we have taken a drink and that we are over the limit. Another one is to ensure that people, our peers, our friends, do the same thing. For example, having a celebration or an event at your own house where you invite your friends and family, you serve them alcohol, and you watch them as they collect their keys and they walk to their cars and drive home. That means that you're also part of the problem. So we all have to take our bit of the responsibility in reality and do what we can. And I think that it is important that every sector of society has a responsibility. So government, yes, of course government has a responsibility. And everybody turns to the government when the numbers are high. They ask the government, what are you doing to protect us? Government has a responsibility to make sure that our roads are safe. Law enforcement has the responsibility to make sure that that roadblocks take place, visibility is there, and that when a road takes place, all the necessary protocols are followed and they follow the rules as they should. But we also have a responsibility to stop repeating this bad behavior that we know is bad behavior. So all of these things should happen at the same time. It cannot be that we're waiting for government to first fix the infrastructure, then we're waiting for law enforcement officers to stop taking bribes, then maybe we'll think about refraining from drinking and driving.
Our lines are open. We'd love to gauge your thoughts on this. What do you think should be done, and what is also our responsibility as drivers out there when it comes to alcohol-related drinking and driving? 061-410-4107, 086-000-2032. Do you think perhaps there should even be far more stringent measures imposed on drivers that have found to be intoxicated whilst driving? And they often say one glass is one glass too many. You can let us know if you think so as well. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. If you want to send through a WhatsApp voice note to 086-000-2032 is the number that you can call us on. Are there any programs that seem to be working, that seem to be yielding results, whether by showing a decline in alcohol-related deaths, or whether by showing increased awareness from motorists out there around their behaviors and their responsibilities?
Absolutely. I think that, and I'm so glad you asked this question, because we often focus on the negative side of things, right? And we don't look at the wins, which I believe that we need to focus on. We did a national pilot with the RTMC last year, for example, and this had been something as a pilot that hadn't been done before. And from that, in a time of 4 months, it resulted in almost 1,300 roadblocks, 7,438 individuals being screened, 1,600 arrests, and importantly, the use of these EBAT machines, which is this innovation that aware.org is also bringing to the party, where instead of drawing blood and waiting for this blood to be tested, because we know that there's this huge backlog in the blood testing area, they can use the EBAT machines, which are, the evidence thereof is admissible in court. So it's bringing things like this to the fore that are absolutely working. In the Johannesburg region, last year, even though the fatalities went up by approximately 5% at the end of the year, this was the only region to go down in numbers by 24%, I believe the number is. So strides are being made. There are wins, and a lot of people don't necessarily know about the wins. And each of these interventions does make a difference. But we do continue to say that one fatality is one too many, and that's why we keep on doing the work that we do, and we do it throughout the year, not just at Easter time and not just at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Mukebe, it's been a pleasure. Mukebe is the CEO of aware.org, but our lines remain open. Would love to hear your perspective around, do you think there's stringent enough action and measures being taken for drivers who drink and drive, motorists who just choose to ignore that letter of the law? And what responsibility do we have as motorists, as pedestrians as well, when it comes to our behavior and the responsibility around being intoxicated? One glass, they say, is one glass too many, and getting on the road. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. Please feel free to send through your WhatsApp voice note. You can even be anonymous if you want, or 086-000-2032 is the number that you can call us on. For now, though, headline news.
Good afternoon. I'm Jolani Tulongwebe, making headlines. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Park Stau says they are still trying to make sense of the new tariffs imposed on South Africa by the United States. Last night, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed a 30% tariff on all imports to the U.S. The Gauteng provincial government has secured over 312 billion rand in investment pledges, exceeding its target by 12.5 billion rand. This according to the MEC for Finance and Economic Development, Lebogang Maile, while addressing delegates at the Gauteng Investment Conference in Johannesburg. And finally, political analyst Sandile Swana believes the seats allocated to the Democratic Alliance in Cabinet may be reduced significantly after they did not vote in support of the national budget yesterday. I will have details on these and other stories at 2 o'clock.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
It is the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM, and we're taking your WhatsApps as well as your calls on 061 is our WhatsApp line, or you can give us a call on 086 000 2032. In the back of that conversation we just had with aware.org, I'd love to know your sentiments in as far as drinking and driving, and what more do you think needs to be done to just ensure that motorists stick to the letter of the law when it comes to getting behind a vehicle, operating a vehicle when you've been intoxicated, and our responsibility in as far as that is concerned. Do give us a shout. Anonymous, how are you doing?
Non Bridget.
You good?
Yes, I'm good. Thanks for taking my call.
Awesome.
Yes. Bridget, what a lovely topic. What a topic. This topic, in fact, concerns us as South Africans. Bridget, we are kind of focusing one-sided. I would rather say that. I'm sorry to say that, in the sense that drunk people, as much as they are causing accidents in our public roads, there are stats that are indicating that beyond drunk drivers, there are stats that are showing that there are other contributing factors in our roads. One factor that is contributing so much is transport and logistics. In transport and logistics, Bridget, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes. In transport and logistics, Bridget, they are the owners of transport and logistics. They've got quotas that they give to drivers, unattainable quotas that they give to drivers to perform. Under such quotas, that is where you get drivers getting involved in accidents. One, I'll give you the example of taxi drivers and the example of truck drivers. Yes. For instance, I'll give a very, very short. I don't want to take so much time.
Yes, please. Yeah, very brief.
There are cases at the bargaining council in Cape Town where a driver was dismissed for coming late. You understand, Bridget? That is so painful. The driver was dismissed for coming late. That is not an isolated case. There are so many cases.
Okay.
So what I'm saying, Bridget, it is not only drunk drivers that are causing accidents in the public road. Thank you.
Got you. Okay, got you. I guess that speaks also to the recklessness at times that we observe from minibus drivers as well as truck drivers. Actually, one of my worst routes in Gauteng is coming from here, going towards Ekurhuleni, past the airport, whatever that highway is called, past the airport, as if you're going towards Birchwood, where the interchange goes left and right. Oh my goodness, it's as though people did not go get their driver's license. Let's go to WhatsApp as well and hear your sentiments there.
It's Mandla here in Bushle Park. I am a truck driver. I always see things every day on the road. You know, the best measurement for a best driver, it is not all about changing gears and controlling the steering wheel. It is about the attitude towards driving. Out of 100 people on the road, there are only 30 who are the best drivers. Others have got bad attitude towards driving. I think the only way to finish this, whenever a person is found drunk and driving, permanently his or her license should be taken away. Thank you.
The irony of we talk about truck drivers and then we have Mandla, who's also a truck driver. But a brilliant observation there, and I like how you put it, Mandla. It's about the attitude of how one actually approaches driving, right? Because there are people who are on the road and they're not really considerate. They're not considerate, they're not conscious, they're not alert and aware as to how their actions on the road impact other people, other drivers on the road. So you're right. So maybe the conversation should be extended to just beyond just drinking and driving rather, but also just our driving behavior as South Africans. And as Mandla puts it, our driving attitudes as South Africans. Maybe that's what we should also extend and say, are we good drivers as South Africans? Are we, just give me one word. Send me a voice note and give me one word on whether or not are we good drivers as South Africans. Matlakala, how are you?
I'm fine in yourself, Bridget.
I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, I just want to agree with Mantra because I'm a trade unionist. Currently, I'm dealing with a case in Zanin where a driver was, he worked more than 24 hours driving a truck from Palabora, Polokwane. He was on his way, I think, to Bloemfontein or whatsoever. He was involved in an accident because of fatigue. The company dismissed him. You see, so the conversation shouldn't be just about drunken driving. Fatigue amongst the road freight companies or drivers. The companies are forcing them to drive excessive hours. They work in an unconducive environment. For example, a driver will be sent to Palabora. He will be expected to rest 10 o'clock during daytime in a summer day. Do you think that driver will rest?
Absolutely not. Even I can't rest at 10 o'clock.
Palabora, the temperature is about almost 40 degrees Celsius, and there's mosquitoes there. You see, and he has to sleep inside the truck, not on a bed or something. And if he doesn't reach a target, he will be dismissed. I mean, in Nelspruit, there are companies, road freight companies. They say the driver must reach certain kilometers a day or certain loads per week. If he doesn't, they dismiss them. So what is the option for the drivers? Is to drive even when they are fatigued. Even when, they overspeed, they drive even when they are fatigued. I think Road Freight Bargaining Council must be invited to deal with this issue.
Absolutely. And interesting to get all the different perspective as well. Thank you, Matlakala, for weighing in on that conversation. We see your WhatsApps coming along. We're going to try and find some time to... my apologies. Got a tickle in my throat. We see your WhatsApps coming in, and we're going to try and find some time to get around them as well. For now, perhaps let's go to our next conversation. But please, let's not dissuade you from sending in your observations around driving, rather. It started off as a conversation with aware.org, just looking at drinking and driving and alcohol-related drinking and driving and the conversations that they've had with various stakeholders just a few days ago. But it's evolving to us having a general conversation around our driving attitudes as articulated by Mandla and the various environments and circumstances that are at play with why we see such negligent driving and such unconsidered driving on South African roads. So we'll find some time a little bit later on in the show, but in the meantime, keep the voice notes coming and we'll definitely bank them on 061-410-4107. It's just gone 20 to 2 o'clock. Let me deal with this tickle in my throat and then we'll come back on the other side.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
It's a battle of fast fingers in studio between myself and my tech operator. By the way, we are live streaming as per usual. You can catch our live stream on our social media handles at SAFM if you want to get a visual sensory of what happens in the studio. Still trying to convince my team to make features from time to time, just to walk past in the background in the foreshot, wave to you. be interactive or something. Right now, though, we are catching up with Tsepo Bupape, who is a solo exhibitor, and we're talking around the art scholarship opportunity. And this one is the annual Arts and Culture Trust Nuloha Scholarship Program. It's targeted for those who are in the world of arts and culture, and the application deadline has been extended. How are you, Tsepo? You good?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very, very much. I mean, first and foremost, I guess let's just get into, I know the Arts and Culture Trust, the oldest organization of its type in South Africa, and they run some really interesting programs. But for our listeners who might not be clued in, give us a little bit of background on the Arts and Culture Trust and the significance of the work that they do.
My sister, I'm not sure whether I'm on the right program or not, but I'm not associated with the Arts and Culture Trust.
Oh, okay. You know what, Tsepo? It seems as though, hold on, my apologies. You know what? I've got my times confused here. Okay, there we go. The Arts and Culture Trust folks are coming after you. After you. Apologies for that. Let's start again.
No problem. No problem.
Let's start again. They are coming after you. So, Secrets in the Water is the exhibition that we're talking about.
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
I am now on the same page as you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay. Maybe let's have an introduction as to Tsepo Bupape himself, the visual artist, a multi-talented artist, and you are behind the solo exhibition.
Yes. My name is Tsepo Bupape. I'm a visual artist from Lenasia South in Johannesburg. Yeah, and I've been painting now for the past 8 years, which has culminated into what we're going to have now as my very first debut solo exhibition, which is going to be happening at the Dalrol headquarters later this afternoon. Later this evening, rather. That's when the show opens. So, yeah, the show is called Secrets in the Water. It has come together as I won the very first Dalrol Visual Arts Merit Award, which came with a 9-month residency at the Ellis House Art Building.
Oh, nice.
So after a long 9-month pregnancy, we are finally here and I'm finally ready to share with the world this body of work.
All right, well, let's unpack the title, Secrets in the Water, because that's very much a play on words.
Secrets in the Water is it's a critical study of water as a life-giving force and a life-giving energy. It speaks about the relationship between African spirituality and water in all its forms, you know. So it's about how one can transform himself spiritually and use water as a vehicle to connect with one's higher self.
Oh, very interesting. Has your work always explored sort of the connectivity between the spiritual and the earthly?
Yes, my work is very much about the microcosm between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, and kind of how they link or affect each other. So that's what my work is generally about. But with this particular exhibition, I'm looking at water as an element and a substance that we use to connect with the spiritual realm.
Does this exploration of the complexities of African spirituality and its connection to water, does it come to be because of some or other personal quest, or is it just an unrelated sort of, I guess, adventure that you decided to go on?
My work is deeply rooted with my person. Definitely speaks very much to my personal life. So I began to look at ways and forms of connecting to the higher self, because I'm also kind of on a spiritual journey of finding my lost innocence, per se, in inverted commas, or, to connect with my higher self, being my God, and to reach a point where I reach my highest potential, but also I'm informed enough to heal me of the ills that I've already carried with me through life experience. So I begin to look at ways or forms of healing or forms of connecting, or forms of spirituality. And particularly with African spirituality, I found that the element of water is very much important in that vehicle, that we use to connect with the higher self. So yeah, I also used very much water in all forms, as the audience will see in the body of work. And I'm just sharing my insights on what I found water and how it is used as a vehicle of spiritual healing and of spiritual finding.
How was the 9 months of impregnation there at Ella's house? I can imagine lots of also inspiration coming out of that space, considering so many of your peers that call it their home.
Yes, definitely. Never before in my career have I worked in a building where other artists are working in close proximity. So yeah, it just opens up your world, into how other people are relating and how they are working through the ideas that they have or the expressions which they want to put out onto the world. Also, learning, techniques and the ins and outs of, what to do and what not to do, from those that are more experienced than I, that was, I think, the invaluable takeaway that I took away from working in a building like that.
Awesome stuff. So you are opening today your solo exhibition, and you are going to be exhibiting at the Delro headquarters in Bram until the end of the month. In Bramley.
Yes, in Bramley. That will be up until the end of the month, up until the 30th. But I will also have a walkabout, which will be on the 12th of April. That's the following Saturday from now, where there I get to speak more intimately about the work and each piece and what it means to me, and the audience gets to then experience the exhibition through my eyes.
Awesome stuff. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Tsepo, and thank you for your humility. That was visual artist Tsepo Pupapi, and of course that exhibition, Secrets in the Water, is opening today until the 30th out at Delro headquarters in Bramley, and on the 12th, it's next week Saturday if I'm not mistaken, he's got that walkabout coming through. We're going to take a quick pause, recalibrate. It's just gone 10 to 2 o'clock, and then we'll be right back.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who side-foots it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC+. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons, right here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, with me, KG Mwekezi.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, we've recalibrated and quickly catching up with Dr. Eugene Machimana, who is the head curricular community engagement in UP's Department for Education Innovation. Dr. Eugene, my head was still stuck in arts, so I was thinking curator now instead of curricular. How are you doing this afternoon? Dr. Eugene? Hopefully Dr. Eugene doesn't have me on mute. Dr. Eugene? Ooh, we're trying to, maybe let's, whilst we try and patch back to Dr. Eugene there, because they've got an interesting program that they've sort of rolled out in Pretoria, and they've taken an unofficial rubbish dump. And they've taken an unofficial rubbish dump and a hotspot for illegal activity and turned it into a community engagement hub. So we're going to try and get Dr. Eugene back on the line. But in the meantime, let's double back to some of your voice notes from our earlier conversation regarding driving.
Afternoon, I was Bridget Masinga original from Limpopo. I was Bridget, before we start with drink and driving, we should first start with asking if a person is good at driving. Some people drive, but you'd see what they're just, the car is driving them and not necessarily they are driving the car. They're not even aware of their surroundings. There are people, I know of a neighbor of mine, he has never been in an accident, but he always has a bottle with him. As in like he's always drinking, not always, but yeah, weekend you are sure that he's going to drink and he'll be behind the wheel. But then when he passes by our gate, he doesn't speed, he just relaxes through the road. You wanna going to his house from the tavern, you understand? But then there are some people, once they are drunk, they are all over the place. They want to be felt that they are driving, they are speeding all of a sudden. But I think alcohol it in different ways, you understand? Someone.
Hi Bridget, Lunga, Western Cape, hope you're well. Just in terms of whether South Africans are good drivers or not, I've experienced a lot of issues. However, I've been involved in 3 accidents, all minor, of which 2 involved foreign nationals and 1 with a South African. And the attitude from the foreign nationals when in an accident, i.e. getting a license out of the person, getting information out of the person, is very difficult. And then obviously the gentleman that hit me from South Africa, he was driving a company car. He didn't have a choice. But yeah, so as to whether we're good drivers or not, I've seen a lot of crazy things on the road. People stop in the weirdest places. And taxi drivers, let's not even talk about taxi drivers. Anyway, have an awesome day. Cheers.
I laugh at the fact that as Lunga tells us his story from Cape Town, Uzwilele disclaim that he's been in 3 accidents, but he was not at fault. He went to great lengths to tell us how it was other people. But yeah, I think we really are horrible drivers. I think we are horrible drivers. Every day when I drive in Johannesburg, I think, and I think it's also city dependent. I think Joburg drivers in general, we are horrible drivers. And I don't know what it is. And maybe even the previous voice note that said that some people are in the car, but the car is controlling them and they are not controlling the car. That also speaks to that sentiment that our earlier caller had said about our attitude towards driving. So maybe before we even drill down to our relationship with alcohol and driving, we need to get to the crux of our relationship and cars, and our relationship with the road, and whether or not we really do respect just our presence on the roads, because we are horrible drivers. And you notice how horrible we are as drivers when you start also traveling to other places in the world where, for instance, people are legally allowed to drive at 180, but they don't. They don't. And you start drilling into the data and the statistics of their road fatalities as caused by reckless driving, and you realize it's minimal. So it speaks to that attitude that they have and that awareness that they have around driving. Let's go to WhatsApp. We'll sneak in one more voice note before we get to the top of the hour news. We'll bring Dr. Eugene on the other side so that we can have a proper conversation.
Make a sale. Afternoon, Bridget. Bridget, the car dealership, they must not just make a sale. When they sell those cars, they must check the person they are selling the car to, whether they can drive these people. It's as good as selling a bottle of whiskey to a grade one. Sometimes it's dangerous. You are selling a coffee to your customer there. They must also check, vet, advise those first-time buyers there. Norman from Brixton. Afternoon, Bridget.
Norman, you're so angry at first-time car buyers. I think it's also the eagerness, perhaps. It's the eagerness of first-time drivers that makes them get on the road, and they're so reckless about, and they're not understanding. I made my sister drive over the holidays. We were driving from Mpumalanga here, and I made her drive on some open stretch because she always says to me she can drive. And she realized after I made her drive that she actually can't drive, because she was like, oh, it's weird how you can control this big car. It looks so easy when you do it, but when I'm doing it, I'm like, you see, you can't drive. One more voice note, and then we get to the news.
Hi, Bridget. I think that South African drivers have just become extremely inconsiderate of each other. And it's maybe as a result of some road users who have ignored everything with regards to road safety. They treat the roads as their own, and they just drive as they wish. Red's the new green. There are no stop streets or stop signs that's adhered to. So, because of that, most other road users are adopting the same attitude. So if you get to a traffic light, you get to a stop street, it's just a free for all. And hence the reason why we have so many road accidents, we have so much road rage. The good old basics have gone out the window.
That's the
Hi, Bridget.
It's 2:00 on the dot. It's time for us to get to the news with Jolani Tulo.
Top stories as far as South Africa trying to make sense of the new tariffs imposed by the United States, and Gauteng announces investment pledges. Good afternoon. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau says they are still trying to make sense of the new tariffs imposed on South Africa by the United States. Last night, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed a 30% tariff on all imports to the U.S. Tau says it's not clear how the U.S. arrived at the 60% duties that South Africa is imposing on U.S. goods into the country. Speaking at the Gauteng Investment Conference in Johannesburg, Tau said South African tariffs for U.S. goods are much lower. Meanwhile, the rand has continued to extend its losses against the US dollar after Trump's announcement This morning, the local currency plummeted to 18 Rand 83 cents to the dollar, just shy of the 19 Rand mark. This on the back of a stronger US dollar driven by risk aversion, with the impact of the new tariffs largely uncertain. Notando Makudulela reports.
This is the weakest level the local currency has hit since mid-January this year. On Wednesday, Trump announced a 30% baseline tariff on all imports from South Africa to the United States. At the same time, the budget's fiscal framework was passed after weeks of political disputes. The Democratic Alliance voted against the framework and said it will challenge the outcome in court. This has triggered fears about the sustainability of the GNU.
Political analyst Sandile Swana, meanwhile, believes the seats allocated to the Democratic Alliance in cabinet may be reduced significantly after they did not vote in support of the national budget yesterday. The DA, which is the ANC's biggest GNU partner, rejected this year's budget because the ANC did not include the party's economic reform proposals in the fiscal framework. However, the National Assembly was able to pass the budget without the DA when 194 MPs voted in favour of the fiscal framework policy. Swana says that there's a possibility that some of the seats allocated to the DA in cabinet may be given to Action SA and BOSA.
Then if the DA is not happy with the remaining seats, it may decide to leave on its own. I don't think Cyril Ramaphosa is the type of guy who would actually go and tell Steenhuisen to pack his bags and go with his team. I think he will create conditions, if he finds it necessary, to make it less and less attractive for the DA to stay. But I don't think he will be open and do a direct confrontation and execute a direct confrontation with the DA. That is, most of the time, that has not been his style.
The Gauteng provincial government has secured over 312 billion rand in investment pledges, exceeding its target by 12.5 billion rand. This according to the MEC for Finance and Economic Development, Lebogang Maile, while addressing delegates at the Gauteng Investment Conference in Johannesburg. The provincial government revealed that investment pledges include a total of 60 projects across 15 sectors and subsectors, including manufacturing, mining, transport and ICT, among others. Maile says investment pledges came from local, regional and international investors.
From South Africa, we have pledges amounting to 179 billion. From the United States of America, we have pledges, Minister. As you manage the other issues, we are doing business with the private sector. So, from the United States of America, we have pledges amounting to 51.4 billion. In the European Union, pledges have been received from France and Estonia, totaling just over 2.8 billion.
The N3 toll concession says all lanes remain closed to traffic on the N3 near Warden in the Free State. This follows a crash between two trucks which occurred in the early hours of this morning. Both the Joburg-bound and Durban-bound carriageways on the N3 remain closed while extensive cleanup operations continue. Both trucks, including the one transporting a highly flammable substance, have been successfully removed from the scene for safety purposes. N3TC has warned road users to continue to expect congestion and traffic delays in the area. Recapping the top story this hour, Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau says they are still trying to make sense of the new tariffs imposed on South Africa by the United States. Last night, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed a 30% tariff on all imports to the U.S. For SAFM News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
What does the data suggest to support you describing it as a pandemic? And you've just done that.
Every day in South Africa, at least 15 women are murdered, and then 117 women report rape cases to the police. So that on itself just gives you a small picture of why we say that it is a pandemic. That's just a summary, the fact that we're rape capital of the world.
That's Bulelwa Adonis, the Women for Change spokesperson.
You're listening to the National Pulse. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
I never was your ordinary lover. I never hurt you and just walk away. And though you came to me when I was under, our lives began to move in separate ways. I never thought our love would last forever, but I never wanted things to end this way. Now I lie here cold and alone, nobody's home. I know I'll make it on my own. It'll turn out right for me, baby, gonna make it on my own. Start a brand new life without you, baby, never gonna be alone. It's not a fantasy, I'm free, baby, and the love we had is gone. Possibilities out there, baby, gonna make it on my own. Whatever you have left me, I'll remember. And loving you was not a waste of time. I know that sometimes I was too short-tempered, but never did you speak your heart and mind to me. And no, I never said it would be easy without you, but I will never put my life on hold again. I may be lying cold and alone, and you may have someone. I know I'll make it on my own. It'll turn out right for me, baby, gonna make it on my own. Start a brand new life without you, baby, never gonna be alone. It's not a fantasy, I'm free, baby, and the love we had is gone. Possibilities out there, baby, gonna make it on my own. You said I'm not the kind of man you need, or maybe you need someone who just agrees. You said I took the music over you. Well, I guess it must be true. It makes it easier for me, and it's all I like for you. It's all I need to set me free. It'll turn out right for me, baby, gonna make it on my own. Start a brand new life without you, baby, never gonna be alone. It's not a fantasy, I'm free, baby, and the love we had is gone. Possibilities out there, baby, gonna make it. I'm gonna make it on my own. I'm gonna make it on my own.
RJ Benjamin coming through with Gonna Make It On My Own. We thought we'd do something a little bit groovy for you this afternoon because it's a bit gloomy outside and we're dealing with a lot by way of the political landscape and geopolitics in the country. So, you know, any moment that we can take just to catch our breath a little bit and and just realign our chakras and take our minds off some of the hard news. We've got to take it. We've got to take it. Right now, we are going to get into a conversation with Mary Jane Mpahlele, an attorney specializing in family law. And we're going to be talking around just debunking maybe and trying to understand some of the laws around shared life, cohabitation, whatever you may call it. We have the vernacular for it, right? Fat and sit is what we call it in the vernacular. And things like separation. We must actually explore. We must have a conversation where we explore where some of these terms derive from. Just a fun conversation between ourselves. Mary Jane, how are you doing this afternoon?
Hi, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I am great. Thank you very much. So here's the thing, and now it seems to be backed up by data because just 2 weeks ago, we had Stats SA unpacking some of their more recent surveys for us. And it seems that even by data, more and more couples in South Africa are choosing to live together outside of the traditional civil marriage contract. And perhaps colloquially, when you use terms like fat and sit, it almost has a disrespect element to it. But essentially, that is what we are choosing to do. More so, interestingly enough, also as couples of color, black couples particularly, versus Caucasian couples. So that number seems to be a little bit higher. But what does this mean legally? And we visited this show, this conversation last year. We're visiting it again because it always elicits still unclarity from a lot of our listeners. But what essentially what does this mean legally when we're deciding that we are going to come together as a union but outside of the contract of marriage?
Okay. So fat and fat or cohabitation, it's much easier to say fat and fat because most South Africans can relate to the phrase. But yes, that's typically when two people who are not married stay together and behave towards each other like a married couple without getting married. However, I need to emphasize that when we say people are cohabitating or there's a fat and fat, it's where there's no civil marriage in terms of the Marriages Act. There's no civil union. There's no customary marriage. There's no a religious religious marriage, rather. And there is no customary marriage at all, even if it's registered or not.
Yeah.
There's no customary marriage. No one pays lobola. There's no such a thing. It's just two people who have decided to stay together and not get married. That is the situation. But what that means in terms of the legal framework, can we just deal with some of the misconceptions first? The most popular ones that I've heard is if we stay together for 6 months, it means that there's a common law marriage. Our law does not have such a thing. It does not recognize a common law marriage.
Repeat that again, Mary Jane, because you would be surprised at how many people go, I've been living with this man for 2 years.
Yes. Then we must be married. The most I've heard is people saying just because they've been staying together for 6 months, it means they are married, or somehow they're entitled to the other party's assets. But that is not the position in our law. Parties do not acquire an automatic right to the other party's estate by virtue of a fat and fat or 6 months staying together. And parties cannot inherit from each other the same way parties who are married in community of property would inherit from each other through a fat and fat, unless, of course, they confer those inheritances through a will. But if there's no will and we're just staying together, I can't say now I'm entitled to 50% of your estate because we were staying together.
Sure. Okay, and I think those two are the biggest misconceptions, right? Because people get into, and I mean, it's 2024. One is allowed to define what unionship is for themselves as individuals. So we're not having a conversation where we're judging that, but we're having a conversation that says can you get into it, though, understanding the legal implications and ramifications for yourself and your partner? And I think those are the two biggest misconceptions. This thing about common law marriage, which you say unheard of, doesn't relate to South Africa's context, no such thing. And then becomes the issues around the financial security element of it, right? Because we've chosen this life together, we've built this home together, we've gone in however we've gone in, 50%, 60-40, whatever it is, but we've built this thing together as a unit and a pair. And then the Popakom dance, and things hit the fan. And now it's time for us to separate these things. So what would be the best advice, practice for a couple that is seeking to get into a union like this if we're thinking worst case scenario?
Formalize it if you wish to benefit each other. Draft a will and give your spouse the security that you want for them. Your partner, sorry, not spouse. Give your partner the security that you want them to have when you pass on. Do a cohabitation agreement or draft a will where you can confer that interest to them or whatever benefit that you want them to have. The other two misconceptions, which I think is important that people also know, is the entitlement to spousal maintenance. In itself, spousal means we are married. So if we are not married, there is no legal duty for one partner to support you after the separation. And the other one is people think just because they are buying, the other partner has a property, they are entitled, there's an automatic entitlement to that property.
Interesting. So here's where I want to throw a spanner in the works. And I'm not sure if it was a conversation between you and I last year or conversation with one of your colleagues in the family law fraternity. And perhaps this will derail us, I don't know. But in that conversation, there were some takeaway learnings. And there we were talking, for instance, in the construct of a partner who is perhaps civilly married, but has another committed relationship, right? And they've been responsible for that other partner by way of whether they've paid that partner spouse, well, let's call it partner maintenance, and something happens. If the girlfriend or the extra partner is able to demonstrate in a court of law that this person actually had some kind of financial responsibility for me, that there's been instances where the courts have ruled in favor of that partner to tap into the estate to some degree or whatever post-death situation. Is that kind of scenario applicable as well when we are living, cohabitating together?
Okay. So when we speak about protection to partners who are fat and certain, we can't have that conversation without looking at the Banya versus the Master of the High Court matter, where two people were living together, were not married, were just living together. However, they were intending to get married. But before they could get married, the other person passed on, and the lady who remained behind wanted to get something from the estate because, this person was responsible for this and that, and they took care of me. Despite having had the intention to marry but not married before they passed, the lady on that basis wanted to get something from the estate. And I think this was such a good turning point for the legal position governing these matters. The matter was before the Constitutional Court, and the court held that Section 1, subsection 1, which regulates in the Interstate Succession Act, was unconstitutional and invalid in that it was excluding the surviving life partner. The key word here being life partner. So if you can show that, there was a permanent opposite-sex life partnership according to the case law, you would be able to stand a chance to get something.
Okay.
And the court also dealt with the Maintenance Act, the Section 2, subsection 1 of the Maintenance Act, and also declared it invalid in that it excludes surviving life partner in a permanent opposite-sex life partnership. The life partnership are the two key words.
Mary Jane, can I ask you a favor? Hold that thought. Let's just go into a break quickly, and then we'll come back and you'll continue unpacking for us.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who siphons it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
All right, we're in conversation with family law expert Mary Jane Mpahlela, joining us now, an attorney and public speaker, and we're just weaving our way through a conversation that's speaking to being in a shared life partnership, cohabitation and separation, and some of the legal elements that you should be aware of if you decide to go this route, which according to Stats SA, quite a significant number of South Africans are actually choosing to, come together in union outside of being traditionally married. And Mary Jane, you were walking us through the judgment around surviving partners, and what the legalities would say based on that previous judgment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. As I was saying, in terms of the Maintenance Act and the Interstate Succession Act, in light of the judgment between the Banya and the matter of the High Court before the Constitutional Court, the parties who are in these Vatenset arrangements may be able to claim against the other party's estate. However, it's not an automatic right. They would have to show that, there was an obligation, there was a partnership which would entitle them from benefiting from that estate.
Okay. And that's not an easy thing to do, I would presume, because then it would mean that everybody would do it.
Yes. It's not an easy thing to do. For instance, if you were to prove that there is a life partnership, you would have to prove the aim of the partnership, that it was to make profit, that both parties must have contributed to the partnership, and the partnership must have operated for the benefit of both parties. So it's not something that's automatic by virtue of living together without getting married.
And by way of when children enter these arrangements, and I know obviously there's a different set of rights that speak to child and children well-being in South Africa. When children enter this equation, does it complicate things more?
Not necessarily. With maintenance towards the children, it's the responsibility of both parents, whether they are married or not. If the other parent passes on, the children would be entitled by virtue of that person being their parent to inherit from their estate. And then in terms of parental rights and responsibilities, those don't change based on the marriage status between the parents.
Ooh, that's another thing that we need you to say again, because I think a lot of people misconstrued that or decided that they wanted to mean once we separated, I have no more rights and responsibilities towards our child. And you spoke about, getting into drafting a cohabitation for our conversation's purposes, a fat and sit will of sorts. What must be contained in a document like that? Because it's a different kind of consideration to a normal will, or it's really like drafting a normal will?
Are you referring to the cohabitation agreement?
Yes. So if me and my partner get together and decide that we want to do a will that speaks to worst case scenario to protect either or party, what should we consider must be contained in that will?
Okay. In the will, you can choose whoever you want to benefit from your estate. In the cohabitation agreement, you can deal with a range of things, the assets and liabilities of the respective parties. It is especially useful when there is an immovable property which the parties wish to buy together, where you can say, upon the death of one of us, the other party will either sell the property or continue to pay for it. You can also regulate the living expenses in the common household and who will be responsible for what. Aspects regarding life insurance and pension. The parties may also, for example, agree that they will nominate each other as beneficiaries of the various policies. These usually we advise clients to do before they move in together, so that, when things get sour, they can just pull up the agreement. But it's also important, I should not forget this, that these agreements, the cohabitation agreements, are only enforceable between the parties, not against third parties. Because remember, these people are not married. They are merely just, staying together, and they decide that for the smooth operations of co-sharing and living together, they want to do a cohabitation agreement.
Yeah. What's disturbing, final point of our conversation perhaps, is the suggestion, and I don't know if I'm understanding it correct, that in cohabitating situations, partners may not have the same level of protection as married couples in the case of domestic violence.
They do. They do. The Domestic Violence Act does not consider people who are cohabiting and who are married. They consider them both for the purpose of the Act. So if parties are cohabiting or participating, they are able to approach the Domestic Violence Court for assistance in the event that either party commits an act of domestic violence towards the other.
Wonderful.
So it doesn't make the distinction between married and unmarried.
And unmarried, no? Wonderful. I thought that perhaps I was reading that completely wrong. Mary Jane Mpahlele, thank you so much once again. And today we were just touching base with Mary Jane around some of the legalities for you to consider if before you ask your girlfriend and your partner to move in with you because you enjoy that Sunday dinner and you want that winter warmth every night, just consider everything that Mary Jane has said here today and maybe get that necessary documentation and cohabitation agreement in place to safeguard the both of you. It's gone 2:30. Jolani Tulo is standing by with the headline news, and then we'll come back with Kids Corner.
Top stories this hour. The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, has filed papers in the Western Cape High Court to urgently interdict the implementation of the 0.5 percentage points VAT increase. The increase is supposed to come in effect on the 1st of May. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Park Stow says they are still trying to make sense of the new tariffs imposed on South Africa by the United States. Last night, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed a 30% tariff on all imports to the US. And finally, Hungary is set to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. The decision was announced in an official post on Facebook. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff said the procedure would be initiated immediately. I will have details on these and other stories at 3 o'clock.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Side by Side.
Good afternoon and welcome to Side by Side right here on SAFM, brought to you by the National Department of Health, Ilifa Labantwana, and the SABC Education. Today we're talking about early language development and baby babble. You might have noticed your little one making adorable sounds like cooing, gaggling, and babbling away. But did you know that baby babble is more than just cute noises? On our drama episode yesterday, Nes Piliswa explained how these early sounds play a key role in developing language skills and communication. To unpack this fascinating topic further, we are joined by Dr. Dagada from Dagada Speech Therapy and Audiologist. Dr. Dagada, thank you so much for joining us today. We've all had baby babbling away, and I've also just found out that those little sounds are actually an important part of their language development. Why is baby babble such a big deal?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, it is a big deal. Baby babble is a crucial part of early language development. So it represents the initial steps that babies take in learning to communicate. And also it helps babies to experiment with making sounds, which is the foundation for developing speech. So through babbling, babies learn to control things like their vocal cords, mouth, and tongue, which are essential skills for speaking. And I'll add that also, babbling is a way for babies to engage with their caregivers and initiating early social interactions and bonding experiences. So it helps in that regard.
Language development is such an exciting journey. Can you walk us through the different stages? What should parents expect as their little ones learn to communicate?
I would say that your child's early years are some of the most vital for communication development. And the communication is what makes us who we are, and it is how we relate to one another. So it is important to get a good start. And communication doesn't only start when the child is born. It can also begin or start before birth. Communication begins even before a baby is born. This is where if you ask any expecting mother about their communication with their baby, they'll tell you that they do know how their baby is feeling by the baby's movement. They must make sure that they talk to the unborn baby and even play him or her a little music. It helps a lot. And another part is that then there's communication after birth. Communication after birth, early communication skills develop very fast. 1 week can make a huge difference in a child's abilities. And children learn new skills so quickly during the early years that even a week difference is not comparable. And also another thing that I must add is that you need to keep a watch on the development of your child's speech and language milestones. Very much important. When we look at language milestones, we are talking about if the child is developing language according to his or her own age, so this thing has to go with age. We know that, okay, when the child is 18 months or 24 months or 1.5 or 2 years, this is what the child is supposed to be saying. So those things are very much important that we keep a look on those milestones. Because your child is developing so fast, a couple of months delay now can turn into a bigger problem later. So if we ignore signs of language development delays or any delays, these things can develop into a huge problem later. So it's important that parents, they look out at the development milestones, especially language milestones, to be able to notice if there's any delays, and then we can be able to address that. But let me also tackle some 3 stages that maybe I would love to make parents be aware of, because early speech and language skills develop during mainly these 3 stages. One is pre-linguistic stage, which is from 0 to 18 months. And second one is emerging language stage, which is 1.5 to 2 years. And the third one is developing language stage, which is from 2 years to 3 years. So language developed during these 3 stages, and it's very much important that parents keep an eye on these 3 stages.
Dr. Dagada, thank you so much for joining us today. We've learned quite a lot. In closing, every parent wants to help their baby learn to talk, but sometimes we're not sure what to do. What are some simple and fun ways parents can encourage early language development?
Parents must talk, and I mean talk with their children. It's very much important because your child needs to hear a word at least 100 times before he or she can begin to say it. Whatever words you want your child to say, you need to say them repeatedly. So repetition helps a child to grab or learn a word. And in other words, talk to your child everywhere. Talk when you're eating, talk when you're cooking, talk when you're cleaning, talk when you're shopping. Another thing is talk when you're dressing your child, talk when you're bathing your child. It's very much important to take note of that, because this will help the child to learn to say words and so forth, and then later on develop into sentences. For those of you who are on the quiet side, I know this is going to be a tough thing to do, whereby you have to be talking and talking and speaking to your child. But your child's stages of language development depend on it, and the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. So talking is absolutely the best thing you can offer your child at this stage of development. Next, the next I can say is that we, as parents, we must learn to follow upon our child's lead. This is whereby when the child is leading you into something, show interest, follow that. For example, if your child probably is playing with a remote close to you, or maybe doing something close to you, and you can see that your child is getting excited about this thing, and you're close to the child, show interest in what the child is doing. But this does not necessarily mean that you should let your child get his or own way. No, but what I'm saying is that at least try to show interest. Try to engage with the child in that. Try to interact with the child in that moment. It helps the child to learn and expand in terms of vocabulary. There are many effective ways or methods which parents can explore to encourage early language development in their children. Another way is simply engaging your baby or your child. That is, describe what you are doing to your child. If you're cooking, if you're a mother and your child is close to you and you're cooking, tell your child what you're doing. Ask your child questions. What am I doing now? What is this? And respond to their babbling. Even if they're saying things that do not make sense, respond as if to you it's making sense. So you should actually respond by saying the correct thing, even though they're babbling. Sometimes also we should also look at reading. Reading is also a very good part also that helps a child with sound and rhyme of language. So reading to a baby also regularly also exposes them to sounds and rhymes of language. Singing songs also helps a lot, and other rhymes can be both enjoyable. It's a quite good experience for your child, and also other educational tools that we can explore for language development. What I can say to the parents is this: there are many ways which parents can explore or use to help their children learn how to speak through simple actions. And this includes talking. Engage in frequent conversations with your baby, even if they can't understand all the words yet. It's okay, just talk. Even if you know that, okay, my child won't understand this, but say it. It has something, it does something to the child. And reading also is also good as well. Read books, especially story books, very much important. And read books aloud, to your baby every day. Singing also helps a lot. Sing songs and other rhymes to help your baby learn new words and sounds. Imitation, this is very much important. Mimic your baby's sound. I know maybe some parents might say, but it doesn't make sense. It's okay, but just mimic them, and also expressions to show that you are listening and engaging with them. It also helps make them feel comfortable, knowing that, okay, what I say, this person is imitating. So it becomes quite interesting for them. Interactive play is also important. Use toys and games that encourage vocalizations and communications to interact with your child or to have playful moment together. It helps the child to learn and thereby develop proper language. I'd like to say thank you so much to you and the listeners for having me on the show this afternoon. Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening to Side by Side, the show that supports you to give your child the best possible start in life. brought to you by the National Department of Health, Ilifa Labantwana, and the SABC Education. Join the conversation with other caregivers on our Facebook page at Side by Side SA and look out for more great content. Join us again, same time next week when we'll be talking about the basics of child development.
Side by Side.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.1 FM in Johannesburg.
Ashraf Gada on SAFM.
Is John Steenhuisen and Cyril Ramaphosa meeting?
I am of the understanding that they have had a conversation, yes. There is a back and forth that's currently underway. We have not concluded yet. We were supposed to conclude last night between ourselves with the DA and the ANC. That conclusion hasn't happened yet. But you would also know, Ashraf, that the Finance Committee has been in a meeting since 10 o'clock this morning. And in that meeting, the Democratic Alliance has moved for an amendment and a tabling of an alternative fiscal framework, which opposes that.
Karabo Kauhau, the DA national spokesperson.
You're listening to the National Pulse Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Alrighty, let's try and catch up with Dr. Eugene Mashimana now, head of the Curricular Community Engagement at UP's Department for Education Innovation. And what was once an unofficial rubbish dump and a hotspot for illegal activity has now been transformed into a thriving community engagement hub. And this is all thanks to the work of the University of Pretoria and its students. How are you doing this afternoon, Dr. Eugene?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you also for inviting me to this particular interview, and I appreciate it. And I also want to greet your listeners as well.
Only a pleasure. Only a pleasure anytime. All right, let's talk about this journey of turning this particular space from really a wasteland, a rubbish dump, to something that was usable for the community. How did this project come about?
Yeah, it's quite it took a process to develop this place, like you indicated. It was a neglected area. Basically, it's a land that belongs to the municipality. It was neglected, not used per se. So as a university, we realized because it's close to the University of Pretoria, Hatfield campus in particular, we realized it's posing a risk for our students, for our community, and the business society within the area. So in 2019 in particular, we decided to adopt this place and use it for curricular community engagement. So we took a process of involving the various faculties that we have at the University of Pretoria. We've got 9 faculties in terms of the process of removing that rubble and the landscaping of the place, and also making sure that it's becoming of a good use in terms of it transforming into a beautiful vegetable garden, but then we mainly use it for curricular community engagement, and various faculties are involved in that.
Yeah.
So it was quite a lengthy process. It's still an ongoing process. However, it has changed in a sense that the homeless people that were living there, they've been moved and rehomed in another safe place, and the place has changed. Those activities, illegal activities, some of them, not all of them, but some of them were involved in drug abuse in that area, which was posing a risk to our students. So it was really, been such a great and journey.
And Dr. Eugene, you talk about sort of the collaborative effort between the various faculties, right? Let's speak about the resources that were essential, or the resources that needed to come together in order to really have this vision come to fruition?
Yeah, the resource, the main resource really, it's a human resource. Human resource in a sense that our students and also the faculty members had to come and be involved in terms of conceptualizing the process, how the place could be changed, and also the landscaping, which was mainly done by the engineering department in particular. Our students there were actively involved. The natural and agricultural science were also involved in terms of guiding how the different sectors of the place could be used. For instance, there's a vegetable garden, there's also a bee harvesting section in that area. There's also, so that's the main part that I could say. However, there's also a financial resources which the Department of Education Innovation was also gracious in terms of supporting. But then with that, we also tried to use as much as possible the resources that are readily available within the community so that to minimize the cost in terms of that project.
Yeah. By way of this space, and you've alluded to it, right? From what I understand, it's quite the multifunctional space because it serves different purposes. You've mentioned that it serves purpose for your curricular activities, for instance, but it also serves purpose for community, right? Because there's therapy centers there and community meeting spaces that have also been isolated within the space.
Certainly, the place serves for different purposes. Like I've already highlighted, the different faculties, health science is also involved in that space, humanities is also involved in this space. Similarly, our communities also, some of them, when they have training sessions, they book the place, we make it available to our community partners at no charge, provided they're not using it for business purposes. So the communities use it for different sessions. Like I know there's also another group that use it for their yoga sessions. So the space is really available for it's a multi-purpose space. It's not just a garden per se.
Yeah.
And with that, it also, in terms of the garden section, let me also highlight that it also helps in terms of getting our students from all various faculties to be involved in terms of planting vegetables, which they also use, particularly the needy students, use it for their meals as such, because we also do not believe much in giving people handouts. So as our students get involved in terms of making sure that they maintain their own section of the vegetable section and also use that for consumption. Similarly, with our community partners, they also have access to that section of the garden.
Yeah. And I mean, and in order to make a space like this sustainable in the long term, I presume that even from the initial stages, they needed to have been community buy-in. What advice would you give to, fellow South Africans listening from every corner? We all faced with these pockets of informal settlements or illegal settlements or wastelands that are getting out of control. What advice would you give by way of how do we come together and collaborate as institutions, business, and communities that live in the space or that claim the space in order to rejuvenate spaces but also keep them sustained?
Yeah, what has been done at Mujakhabedi, it's possible to be done within any community, really. It will differ from context to context in terms of how and what the neglected places could be used for. In some communities, such spaces could be used for recreational purposes. I know of communities where there's no recreational facilities for our children in particular, but you find that there's a place that is neglected. There's different things that could happen there. Firstly, I think it's important to identify who owns the land. Some of it could be a municipality, could be a national government, could also be a private sector. Then be in negotiation with them in terms of using that space. They may also be willing to also put resources, be it finance, be it a human resource, in order to repurpose that particular place. So that will be one of the steps. Then secondly, it's also to make sure that all partners that are involved, they are involved right from the initial stage. That is the design. It should be a core design process. like with us, our community partners were also involved in terms of giving their inputs. Community partners include even the local business sector within the Hartford area that were involved. So let's also take that into part in terms of the core design and the core implementation. Everybody must get involved in implementing whatever we want to do with these neglected places. So if we do that, it will make sure that the place is sustainable, because if you do it alone, it's not easy to sustain. There's no ownership from the broader community. However, if everybody is involved from all these stages, then there's ownership. And also, like I've highlighted before, it's important to try by all means to use local resources, which comes much cheaper, but is also sustainable. And when we speak of local resources, it includes knowledge. Our people, our communities have knowledge. They're experts in their own rights. As a university, we learn much from our community partners. We acknowledge that as well. So it's important that those aspects are taken into care in order to sustain all the projects that we're involved in.
Well, listen, you're doing great work, Dr. Eugene, and continue on. I really do. Every time I speak to a different faculty at the University of Pretoria, it always amazes me and blows my mind just how innovative you guys are and how community-centered you're also. A lot of your programs coming out of campus and really just having a proper impactful touch point with the communities in and around Pretoria. I appreciate the time. That was Dr. Eugene Mashimane, who is the head of the Curricular Community Engagement at the University of Pretoria's Department for Education Innovation. Let's take a quick pause and then we come back and we wrap it up.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends. You need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
Hi, I'm Zycard. Catch me every Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Spotlight as we bring you blow-by-blow sporting action, news. That Spotlight every Saturday. You don't want to miss it.
All right. Let's wrap up the show and touch base with Raymond Lidwaba, who's a chartered accountant and the CEO of I Think Smart Solutions, author of the First Generation Founder, How to Build a Startup Mindset and Thrive. How are you doing this afternoon, Raymond?
Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. So the big burning question here is starting a company with zero connections in South Africa. Are you that person who decided to venture into entrepreneurship? And this is one of the questions you ask people in the work that you do.
No, definitely I'm one of those people who started with zero connections. And it's such an incredibly tough experience. But it's also a gift, because it forces you to become intentional, you become resilient and creative just about how you build relationships and value. When I left corporate, I didn't have a ready-made customer list or a deep network, even in the startup space. But I had a willingness to serve, a willingness to learn and to show up consistently. And I think that's helped so far,
Yeah. So in a country, and I tweeted this once and people were up in arms, in a country where you need to be somewhat connected, or at least the perception is you need to be connected in order to gain access or find some kind of traction. How do small business owners then navigate their way in a market where they are beginning with no real connection base?
It's true what you're saying. I mean, South Africa still runs heavily on connections. But if you're not connected, I think that doesn't mean that you're locked out forever. It means that you have to just be more strategic. You maybe start small, you start local, you solve real problems that people in your particular community are facing. And when you make impact on the ground, word travels, people notice, and that's how you start forming your own sort of like network, right? People collaborate. I would encourage collaboration because partnerships open doors faster than trying to go at it alone. So if maybe align with other small businesses or platforms that already have an audience you're trying to reach, you can start creating your own form of connections. So yeah, it's really tough. We can't sugarcoat it, but we can't also be paralyzed by just how difficult things are and assume that someone is going to save us, because nobody's out here to save us, right? Nobody's coming to save us. So if you're an entrepreneur, you are there to really figure out these very complicated, tough systems and navigate them the best you can.
Yeah. And I would presume that, or we would argue to say that just because you entered the space without any kind of concrete connection or network to either ease your transition or to help you with those infancy stages, it shouldn't be a deterrent to you beginning your venture, and maybe to some degree it can even be a positive in some way.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the curse of being the first generation anything in your family, right? Because you are the one that needs to chart the path. You are the one that needs to sort of like make the sacrifices and build essentially from scratch, from the ground up. And many of us are first generation professionals in our families, or first generation to really get a good education, and first generation to build a business. So if we are going to sit on the sidelines and just complain that we are not connected, well, that's the reality. So we just have to deal with it and do the best that we can.
Yeah. What takeaway would you want somebody to sort of, if the one thing that they can take away from your book, The First Generation Founder, How to Build a Startup Mindset and Thrive, what would that one takeaway piece be?
Yeah, I think, my book talks about my experience having spent time in corporate. I worked at PwC and APSA, spent 10 years there, and built a stable income structure status. But deep down, I felt this pull of entrepreneurship, and I felt this desire to build something of my own. So walking away from corporate, number one, wasn't easy. It came with a lot of fear, self-doubt, and a major identity shift. I didn't know, I didn't grow up in a family with entrepreneurs, so I didn't really know what to expect, So my book really talks about my personal journey, talks about the experience that I've gathered, and now building essentially 3 businesses. So I run IT Think Smart Solutions, IT Think Gaming, and Bisky 99 Ventures focused on tech, gaming, and sports for development. So, I chronicle the journey. I talk about my failures, how I've doubted myself, and how I've grown. So the book is for people who also feel this pull of entrepreneurship, for people who come from families without a legacy of business owners. And the one thing really that I would say people will get from the book is the understanding and the realization that you don't need perfect beginnings.
Absolutely.
You don't need to have everything figured out.
Raymond,
to start.
We have to leave it there for this afternoon, unfortunately, but those are wise words indeed. You don't have to have everything figured out from the start. That was Raymond Lidwaba bringing us to exactly the top of the hour. We're going to make way now for Ashraf Gada and his team. Inshallah, God willing, we do it again tomorrow.
Top stories is how the DA files papers to interdict the VAT increase and more allegations of rape cases in the Eastern Cape. Good afternoon, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe. The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Ziller, has filed papers in the Western Cape High Court to urgently interdict the implementation of the 0.5 percentage points VAT increase. The increase is supposed to come in effect on the 1st of May. This action by the DA follows after the 2025 budget was adopted in the National Assembly yesterday. The budget fiscal framework was adopted with recommendations made by Action SA that Treasury must be given 30 days to come up with alternatives to tax hikes while scrapping the VAT hike and to adjust personal income tax brackets. Zella explains their court action.
The first is to get the process on the 1st of April that transpired in the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Finance declared null and void because they were unprocedural. Therefore, to set aside any decision they took. And the second part of Part A is to interdict a VAT increase on the 1st